Pena, and he's running for Constable Precinct 2.
Correct.
Today is Thursday, October 24th, and with me is Larry Rogers, Del Fessenden, James Byers, David Smith, Dennis Tibbs, and Pat Tibbs. And we appreciate you coming in this evening. And as we discussed, Daniel, if you'd like to start off by your up to 5-minute opening. Once we're done with that, then we'll go around the table.
Okay.
Asking questions. So
Well,
you got the floor.
As you guys know, my name is Daniel Pena. I'm running for Montgomery County Precinct 2 Constable. The reason I'm running is I'm considered a subject matter expert in the county when it comes to several fields: court security, security, active shooter, stuff like that. People ask me to help develop certain programs and help in implementing certain stuff. Unfortunately, since I'm just a specialist on our SWAT team, I make suggestions and make recommendations. As a constable, I feel that I could really be a decision maker. I could help implement those plans. I could help implement those programs. And I have a true passion for helping people in the community. You can see in my background, I've been a paramedic. I'm a wildland firefighter. Volunteer with Team Rubicon. I help in certain disaster recovery. I help with suicide prevention. So I have a true passion for helping people, and I feel as a constable, I can really make a difference in our community and help prepare our community for all aspects of disaster or just in preparedness in general. So, I mean, that's why I'm truly running. I have no other means, but I want to help the community. I'm not in it for myself, I'm in it for the community.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks. Okay, so I'll start us off on a Q&A.
Okay.
Why the constable's office, and why this particular office, Precinct 2, and not some other one?
Well, the main reason Precinct 2 is because that's where I live. You have to live in the precinct if you want to run for a constable, so I'm limited to that aspect. The reason for that office is truly was Gene DeForest had told me last time I spoke to him that he was going to retire. That was several years ago, and I spoke to my wife, and we discussed it, and we decided that I was going to go ahead and announce, and I was going to run. And once I found out that Gene wasn't going to retire, the wife and I already discussed it, and that wasn't going to determine. I love the man, but I think it's time for a change, and I don't think, and the sheriff being an incumbent and having such a big following, I really didn't feel the need to run for much more than Precinct 2 Constable's office. That's
Okay.
right.
All right. Yes, sir. Thanks, Larry.
So you live in Magnolia? Or?
Yeah, it's Conroe. Precinct 2 is Conroe, yes, sir.
Okay. Explain what the responsibilities of the constable are versus the sheriff's department.
Well, the main big difference is that they focus on civil service, civil process. So they serve all the civil paperwork, all the writs, evictions, all the fines. That's the main job of the constable. I just feel that with 14, 15 deputies that they have now, not everybody is needed for that. They could do much more and help the sheriff's office. The main job of the sheriff's office, obviously, is being the lead investigators for the county, is being the primary response, 911 response. I just feel the constables could help supplement that aspect of the sheriff's office. But like I said, the main difference is civil versus the jail and patrol.
Would this be an increase or a decrease financially?
It'll be an increase. Yes, sir.
And how many constables are in Precinct 2?
How many there's 14 total. 14 total paid, but they have a large reserve group. And the reserves they're not paid officers. They volunteer their time twice a month, whatever the required hours are.
Okay.
What percent bump would you give from where you are now to?
Well, it's kind of skewed because I'm a task force officer with the U.S. Marshals, so they give us an allotment yearly for overtime. We have to work overtime doing fugitive apprehension, so I can make anywhere from 68 up to 95, depending on how many hours I work. So it'll be probably on the high end, maybe 40,000. On the low end, maybe 20. So depending on how many hours I work that year of overtime.
Okay.
And whose task force is that? Is that a federal task force?
It is, yes, sir.
So you get a check from the feds?
They pay it to the sheriff's office, and the sheriff's office puts it in our checks.
I got you.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You apparently have quite an extensive background, certifications, et cetera, and so forth. I guess it raises a concern for me of whether you would be satisfied with a constable position, which is, as you have already explained, primarily serving civil papers and so forth. So you'd be stepping from a quite different environment, more intense environment, into a more routine environment. So explain why you're comfortable with that type of transition.
Well, the legislature says that the main duties of the constable is civil process serving. That doesn't mean that's the only thing they do. Just like Precinct 1 has mental health, they have the lake. They still have to serve civil process in their area, but they have other specialties. Precinct 3 has the ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children. Precinct 4 has a team that does narcotics. I want to start a program in Precinct 2 for community outreach to help preparing the community. I have a passion, like I said, for helping the community, and I think as the constable, I could really help implement those programs countywide. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting older in age, so I can't be kicking indoors too much longer. So I'm starting to, I just recently finished my master's degree. I'm currently working on a cybersecurity degree as well, because I know there's life after law enforcement, and I'm getting up there in age where I can't be running and gunning. So I think as a constable, helping build these programs would be right up what I want to do, right up my alley.
So why would that be a more logical function for a constable's office than for the sheriff's office to do that kind of expansion and outreach?
Well, they do it now. Like you saw my background, I do a lot of active shooter training now. I do a lot of community outreach. I teach active shooter now with the health department, but I feel that the limited resources that the sheriff has now, it could be a full-time job. I am on the full-time SWAT team. I am a task force officer. I had to run the dignitary protection for the county. I also have all these other duties of community outreach. I just feel to help alleviate that, if we had a unit dedicated to that, it'll help the sheriff's office and it benefits the entire county, the citizens.
Okay, but your jurisdiction as Precinct 2 is a fifth of the county, whereas the sheriff's office has the entire county.
Right.
And so if you're looking for a program that would reach the entire county, it would seem like the proper home for that would be the sheriff's office.
Right, they have the entire county, jurisdiction of the county, but you're still a peace officer. It doesn't matter if you're a peace officer, you work for Precinct 2, you're a Texas peace officer. Just like the mental health, they're not limited to Precinct 1. They have the entire county. The Internet Crimes Against Children task force officers are limited to Precinct 3. They have the entire county. And same thing with Precinct 4. They work for Precinct 4, but they provide the services for the entire county. So I'll be employed and paid by Precinct 2, but the services will be provided to the entire county.
Okay. James?
Yeah, I think there is a lot of confusion on constable duties, and the people that would listen to this probably would not be aware of the distinctions. But now understand, sure, a constable has the duty by law to serve court papers, subpoenas, that kind of thing. But now, to be a peace officer, I know the constables have to be licensed by the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement Officers Standards and Education.
TCO. Yes,
Now, do the deputies need to be licensed by them as well?
yes, every peace officer is
So
licensed.
once you get that license, you're now in Texas as a peace officer.
Correct.
And the peace officer jurisdiction or duties are the same as any sheriff deputy or anybody else. And as you said, it extends to the entire county, not just for your precinct. But we're back to what Dale was talking about. We do have overlapping duties.
Right.
And I think it's a legitimate question for us as taxpayers to understand how it's more efficient to have 15 for one constable, and I think we have 70 something for the sheriff. I forget the exact number there. How many deputies for the sheriff?
For the sheriff's office?
Oh, no, it's 70.
It's like 600.
Yeah, okay, sorry, correct, for the whole
Yes.
county, you're right.
For
Okay,
600,
good.
yes.
You're thinking Woodlands for this?
Yeah, let's just say it's really for the Woodlands. So that being said, how many do you think are actually required to do primarily the court service of documents? And then we talk about the additional that are there.
For the precinct 2 constable's office?
Yeah, for precinct 2. Oh, what quick question on that. Now, precinct 2, you serve court documents, is it just the JP court?
Yes.
Or do you also, okay.
Yes.
So how do you think are required to actually serve meet their needs?
Well, I'm sure they all could serve them. They're probably all licensed to serve them.
Sure.
How many of them actually serve them? I don't know. I don't know how, with their day.
You think it'd be more than like 3 or 4 just for that one precinct?
I don't think it would require 3 or 4.
Okay.
I think it could probably possibly be done, because most of precinct 2 incorporates the city of Conroe.
All right.
And so the city of Conroe also has their own division that serves civil paperwork with their
Right.
marshals and whatnot. So I don't think they would require all 15 of them
To do
go out and
service.
serve.
So if you would give us an understanding of why, say, 10 or more, that probably wouldn't be needed for the core duty. It's better that they be situated in precinct 2 constable's office rather than the sheriff's office.
For the civil process,
No, for the duties of a peace
the
officer.
duties of the peace officer.
Right.
So, for the sheriff's office, all the duties, they overlap, like you said, they all overlap, whether it's city, state, precinct, they all overlap.
Right,
Now, the primary duties for, like I said, for the sheriff's office, technically is to supervise and handle the jail. So if something were to happen where society were to collapse, the sheriff is only responsible for the jail.
Okay.
So technically, he could have all officers, all patrolmen collapse back to the jail and secure the jail. That's technically what the sheriff is responsible for.
what about equipment? Do you have to have I'm wondering, how many cars are you aware of that precinct 2 has?
I do know the exact number. Some of them are reserve cars,
Mm-hmm.
and some of those guys have paid for their own cars. In the past, the county provided a stipend, vehicle allowance for
Right.
certain ranking deputies, chiefs for the constable, and certain officers were required to use county vehicles. So some of those cars out there might be personally owned vehicles that they've striped out and that they've paid for with the vehicle allowance, so I don't know the exact number of how many vehicles that the precinct has.
All right, thank you. David?
Kind of the same thing that we talked about, so, you know, the citizens of your precinct 2
Correct.
are gonna elect you to represent them, represent the people, for civil processes. And, there's some discussion and apparently some activities going on in which a precinct 2 would have county-wide responsibilities. But the other citizens of the county didn't elect you to do that. They, we had no say. If I live in the Woodlands, I have no say. So why should it be a proper function of the, the constable to provide services in areas and on topics that in which the people in those areas did not elect you
Right.
to do?
I think we're confused with we're not only civil, they don't only serve civil process. That's not their only duty. They do have patrol duties. Now, that is their main function. I'm not saying that I'm gonna go to Magnolia and offer classes there. I'm gonna make it available for everybody. If I find a centralized location in precinct 2, I'm not gonna turn away a resident of the Woodlands who wants to come and get an active shooter training course. I'm not gonna say, what precinct do you live in? You're not welcome here if you're precinct 3. I'm gonna make it available for everybody. I'm not saying that I'm going to go out and neglect my precinct. I will have people who go out and train, make it the entire, if we train precinct 3 or 4 personnel people, I think the entire county benefits from it. I'm not gonna take resources away from my precinct to go out and help other precincts. That's not what I'm gonna do.
I used to live in Denton County, and I'm familiar with Collin County. In Montgomery County, very similar counties, big top 10 counties. The tax rate in Collin and Denton is half of what it is in Montgomery County, half. Do you think it's fair that we have such a large government and, expansion in government where other counties are able to, basically run the government with half the money?
I'm not gonna talk about other divisions or other entities within the county. I know For me, being on the SWAT team, we have a small unit of 11 people. And we do so much, we're able to do so much with just that manpower. That's what I want to do with the constable's office. 14, 15, including the constable. I think there's so much that could be done with that manpower if it's focused in certain areas. I don't know what their daily duties consist of, except for a couple doing civil process. Some of them might be patrolling. Are they wasting time? I don't know. But I just feel that getting them focused and driven to a certain task, so much could be done, and I don't think it needs to cost the taxpayers much more than it's already being spent.
Dennis, real quickly, I'm looking at the map, and it looks like Precinct 2 is largely Conroe city limits. Is that correct? That's just for your information, for your question.
No, that's not my question. Okay, Daniel, what is your personal view and what will your department policy be as it relates to when a deputy can enter private property or enter a private residence without the owner's permission?
Well, that's one of the things we do now with being on the task force with the task force with the U.S. Marshals. We serve all felony warrants. And the only reason we serve felony warrants is because that gives us so much leeway, or not leeway, that gives us permission to enter a residence if we know the person's there, if they're wanted. If they're not, if we think they're there and we can't confirm that they're there, even though they have a felony warrant, we're not gonna go in. I've been doing this for 10 years. We could catch them somewhere else later on if we don't have to go into the house and force entry. We could wait them out. I'm not one to put my officers in jeopardy or the civilians in jeopardy. We've seen far too many times where in Harris County and Houston, where the officers served a bad search warrant and 2 people were killed. We, with the sheriff's office, we have a pretty good policy, and we've implemented it and we've followed it for several years. The 10 years I've been on the task force, we'll wait. If somebody's wanted, we're not gonna force entry if we don't know for a fact that they're there. We don't serve misdemeanor warrants because we can't force entry. We can't go in after them because the law doesn't allow us to. So we're not gonna go into people's houses unless it's been signed by a judge and we know they're there, and we're not gonna force anybody's hand.
So just to be clear, if my neighbor calls and says, I think somebody's being killed in Dennis's house, and you walk up to the door and I come to the door and you don't hear any disturbance or any noise and you say what's going on and I say nothing, what's your deputy gonna do?
My deputy would speak to you, interview you. And
Through the door?
Through the door, of course, through the door. And if there's any sign, might ask you, do you mind if we walk through? And if you say no, then it's no. We do that now. We ask, when we go there, we're like, hey, we're looking for so-and-so. We were told he was here. Well, he ain't here. Do you mind if we check your residence? No. No? Okay, we're good. If they say, no, come on in, check it. And we're like, we're looking for a body. We're not looking for anything else. We're not looking for what's on your counter. We're not looking for what's in your closet. We're looking for where a person could hide. If they allow us in, if they don't, then they don't. And we'll just wait.
Well, that's good to hear. I've had a lot of different answers to that question.
Yes. I've been doing this far too long, and I've searched and I've looked for far too many people to jump the gun or force entry or make a situation that doesn't need to be dangerous.
Well, you can probably come in my house.
Thank you.
Dan, you had mentioned, well, the question was, please describe the concrete goals against which you want to be measured in the coming term. And the first thing you had replied with is you want to run an agency known for transparency and
Correct.
professionalism. Is the current administration, do you feel that's there, or is that something you feel like you're going to bring to the constable's office in Precinct 2?
I mean, from what I've dealt with, I've never really dealt with Constable DeForest in a professional going to his office. I see him on the street, we interact, some of his deputies. I've never really gone to look for information. I've heard from people that, you know, that he doesn't help them when they've asked for help. Like one of the questions was about the camera. Do I mind people recording me? I have no problem with the camera. Wearing it, people recording me, I have nothing to hide. I'm totally transparent. And I treat people the way I feel that I want to be treated or my family needs to be treated. So I think I will bring that to the agency.
Did you say that Constable DeForest does help them or does not?
They've told me that he does not.
He does not?
He does
Okay.
not. Now, I've never confirmed nor denied it. I've never asked him to confirm or deny it, but that's what I've been told.
Okay. And these are deputies?
No, these are just people I've dealt with in the citizen, when we, other
Citizens?
calls, yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And then another part of the question, or answer, I've spoken to other county agencies such as Public Health Department. They inform me they have little to no relationship with law enforcement. These are issues that need to be addressed. Does this include Tri-County Health?
I've never spoken with them. I know I went to a class down with the FBI, a joint criminal investigation for chemical and biological attacks, and I spoke with the director of the public health, and I asked, what do they do with law enforcement? They said they have no contact with them. The only time they ever have contact with officers is when they might have a health clinic or a health fair, and they'll get two officers to work security. Other than that, they don't really deal with them, they don't have that relationship. I have since built that relationship with them. I've been invited to be on an adult prevention suicide committee by the director of the health department. I've offered several active shooter classes with them, English and Spanish. Also, what we call Stop the Bleed for people who have been shot or hurt in active shooters. So I'm building that relationship with people, and like you see in my background, I've worked with many people. I have a relationship with just about everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Daniel, if you would explain to the people who will be watching this, the constable's office, could you explain the structure? So, like, Constable Gable, he's the head of that
Correct.
precinct, constable's office. So DeForest is the head of
Correct.
that, and you're running against him
Correct.
for his position.
Yes,
So you would be the head of.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think somebody's already asked a question. Oh, explain, one of the questions was, please describe what you believe the most significant issues in the race and what you'll do to, you're saying that the most significant issue affecting our race is the need to expand the agency to full-time responding law enforcement agency. This leaves the sheriff's office as the only responding agency in the precinct. Explain that a little bit.
Well, when I was on patrol in precinct, what we called our patrol division was District 1. So it's kind of weird how the sheriff's office has it numbered. So it was District 1 incorporated Precinct 2, and part of that was River Plantation. Back in the day when I was on patrol, this has been several years ago, we'd get there and Constable might be on location, and we're like, so what's going on? And they would give us a rundown and they'd leave. And you were already here, why aren't you taking the report? Oh, we don't have detectives, we don't have investigators, so you guys go ahead and deal with it. And to me, it felt that some of those officers, I mean, why were they patrolling? Why were they there? If they were waiting for us to get there, we could have just got there and did what they did and taken the report right off the bat. But they've gotten there and they've left. I know for one instance, I worked a shooting there. I was the first officer on scene. Well, I was the first county officer on scene, and there was already a Precinct 2 constable. And he had secured my weapon of the crime scene behind his back. And as soon as he was distraught, he ended up leaving the scene. He's like, where's my weapon? He's like, oh, I secured it, here you go. And I'm, why would you do that to my scene? It's a crime scene. And if you're gonna come do that, just don't come at all, my mentality. So I just feel that the precinct will be better served with officers who are actually out there helping the sheriff's office, taking calls, taking reports. That's why I want to train those officers to work the case from street level, the initial report, all the way to when it's referred to the DA's office for the grand jury.
And having a 24-hour agency will benefit the citizens. Do they not work 24 hours?
Yes, sir. They shut down at a certain hour and they go home. And some of the Precinct 2 constables that you see out might be working an extra job, where they're getting paid from a subdivision, like River Plantation paid Constable DeForest to patrol extra. So you saw him late at night, but he was doing that as an extra job, not on duty for the county. He was doing it as an extra job. So it's not a 24-hour agency. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, going back to one of the previous discussions, you want to empower people, empower the citizens to respond to active shooter events and so forth, getting out there in the community and so forth. Where are there similar programs or ones on, maybe ones that you're going to use as a model for your outreach? Where else is this being done?
Well, just about every jurisdiction, I know the city of Houston has several officers that's all they do. That's their full-time job. They're so overwhelmed and so overworked, we've actually, by request, have gone in to help them teach some of these classes. So that's where I'm going to use the model for that. They're being done in all the counties. Alert, which is the advanced law enforcement for active shooter, it's the licensing body for all the instructors. They push out all the classes and they help start these programs. They provide flyers, the equipment, and they certify all the instructors. So it's being used actually worldwide. You can find it in other countries, and it's being funded by, it's in San Marcos, Texas, where Alert's at the university there, and along with the FBI. So that's the blueprint, is they use it nationally.
And so currently in Montgomery County, there's no presence of that type of training or anything, program?
You'll see them every now and then. The sheriff's office does do it. I know right after the San Bernardino shooting, the Christmas party shooting, Judge Doyle started the Run, Hide, Fight for all county employees. We decided to take it a step further. We offered it to all the churches, places of worship. We had like a seminar at the convention center where we invited a bunch of pastors. They came in for a day. There was I think it was a 3 or 4 hour block. We did 2 of them, and 60 to 70 pastors came with church members, and from there we pushed it out, and we've gone to places of worship now, synagogues, temples, schools, private businesses, and we help now, but it could be a full-time job. There's 2 of us that are the primary instructors for the county, and I just feel that we have to put it on the back burner quite often because we do have other duties with SWAT, task force officers, dignitary protection, our training, our regular duties. So other counties have full-time people dedicated to that. So that's a blueprint I want to use.
Changes.
Explain to us what you consider the most dangerous situation for a constable deputy to be in, and any rule changes on how to deal with that situation that you would want to implement as opposed to how it's handled now by the incumbent.
I think the most dangerous for any law enforcement, not just a constable, is coming to somebody's door. We hear it all the time, domestic violences. You go
Right.
up there and you have a writ to evict somebody. People don't want to leave their homes. They don't know what you're there for. You might walk up on the wrong thing. So I think the most dangerous would be knocking on somebody's door. We do it now with the sheriff's office with serving felony warrants. I think the policy that we use is no less than 3 officers for felony warrants. We go 3 officers deep to the residence. We put somebody in the back in case they run out. We'll put 2 in the front, and we take.
And that's what the sheriff
With
does.
the sheriff's office.
What is the current incumbent
What their policy is for.
constable does too?
I don't know what their policy is for serving warrants. I believe it's probably just that 1 officer going to the door, knocking on the door. That's what I've seen in the past. I don't know if that's the standing policy or if that's just how they do things. I don't know. But I would implement at least 2 officers there for safety.
Is it worse or more dangerous during the day, at night, or no
I
difference?
think it's at night because they have the tactical advantage. You're potentially in the light. They could sit back in the house and see you in the front porch. So we do certain things at the sheriff's office that we never sit under the light. We'll knock, we'll step back, give ourselves some buffer, and we'll never sit directly in the door. Now, we don't hide in the bushes. We'll let them know who we are, but we give ourselves a reactionary gap.
Now, I know in domestic disturbance, a lot of times, the problem is that there's already been a confrontation, and when the deputy comes up, probably the offending party calms down, the other party's already incensed, and from what I've seen, often it's the victim that's taken away. How do you prevent those situations?
I think just experienced officers. You have to separate them and question them. And if there's a question on who or if somebody, you can't prove who committed the crime, you don't know who the aggressor is, you don't know, it's he said, she said. At this point, you're bound to separate them. You have to separate them for 24 hours. Now, it doesn't mean you have to separate them by taking them to jail. You could separate them by sending them somewhere else and submit the report and let the judge decide who needs to get the warrant, and then have them coming to the court to defend themselves. But separating them, proper investigation, proper questioning, letting them cool off. We did it on patrol. We don't question somebody because it's like, that's a lie, I didn't say that. So having 2 officers there, one questioning one, separating them, and then the 2 officers could switch, question, and then compare notes, see who's doing what, and then determine if somebody does need to go to jail that night, or does it warrant just separating them for 24 hours? And then submitting it and let the judge decide if there needs to be a warrant, if there's enough cause, probable cause. If not, then it's just a report, information report.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
David.
You know, several months ago, I heard the district attorney, Brett Ligon, talk about the explosion of felonies in the county that of 2014 to 2018. Felony filings were up 40%. He was projecting that it goes high as 60% for a 5-year period. And then a couple months ago, the courts had to come before the commissioner's court to get additional budget because they'd run out of money for hiring public defenders, which is another indication of increase in felonies. So how do we get this back under control with this crime wave we're experiencing in Montgomery County now?
Limit the citizens of the county? No, I don't know. I would say prosecution. We need to, I guess, for lack of a better word, not become Harris County. If they've committed a crime and they're felons, you know, keep them in jail, prosecute them to the extent of the law, and make sure they're locked up. Don't let them out like Harris County. I think that is a lot. And a lot of Harris County warrants, or not warrants, the people are coming up to Montgomery County to commit crimes, especially on the 45 gateway. We see so many people coming up, burglary of motor vehicles, and all those, you know, in Shenandoah, they're just hot spots for burglary of motor vehicles. So they come up, commit crimes, jump on 45, go back to Harris County. I think a good way would be to prosecute them. People know not to come to Montgomery County and commit a crime because the DA is going to seek the severest penalty possible. And we, like I said, being with the fugitive apprehension team in the county, we serve a lot of warrants. We serve a lot of warrants, and sometimes it's like, why are we serving this warrant again? It's like, why were they released? You know, we find that they have a history from other counties that have come up and been arrested here. And so I think not just in Montgomery County it's an issue. I think it's an issue throughout the state that we have some judges who are liberal, who are allowing people to get off on no bonds, or they're letting them free too prematurely or not filing on them. So I just think it's a state problem. It's not just a Montgomery County problem.
Okay. In Montgomery County, there are a lot of conservatives, and one of the things we don't like is the federal government getting into all of our local businesses. And one of the things that we've told other candidates and office holders is that we don't want our police forces looking like the feds.
Right.
We don't want cars painted like the feds. We don't want everybody decked out in black uniforms. And yet we have a lot of black uniforms and a lot of dark cars.
Right.
Used to be some khakis, but most of those I think are gone. In fact, sheriff used to have khaki, didn't
We
he?
had the khaki, like a brown shirt. We have blue pants and brown shirt.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So what's
Still
your,
do.
No, we've gone all
All black.
dark, not black, but dark navy.
just like the feds, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's your position on that issue, and what would your department do? And if you're happy with blue now, is there any way you think that you could transition to something that differs you from the feds?
Well, I have a history of obviously being a tactical background, so I just feel that a uniform needs to be functional. So I don't mind the color,
Yeah.
but I just think that the uniform is not functional. I would go to very similar to what Constable Cash has. Maybe a khaki pants or a 511 pants blue, maybe a polo shirt, which no federal agencies wear that, and allow my officers to be comfortable. It builds morale, and I think they're able to do their job a lot better and easier than having, I don't wear a uniform now in my division. We wear plain clothes, and we have a specialty uniform, so very rarely do I wear a patrol uniform. But to me, when I was on patrol, it was very hindering. You know, getting out of the car on the duty belt, it hindered what I could do. And I'm not a big fan of the traditional police uniform. I would want something functional, comfortable, that would allow my officers to do their job.
Okay. And just a different subject, as constable, would you be able to make your department a 24-hour department, or does that require some legislation or something?
No, it's just readjusting hours.
Just give people night shifts?
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
So you could probably tell by some of the questions going around the room that worried about expenses
I do.
as taxpayers and the constitutional duties that a constable has, Texas constitutional duties, as well as the sheriff. And some are concerned about the shrinking responsibility of the sheriff's department and the increasing of the constables to a point where they may either overlap or we're having different groups, you know, different law enforcement groups that may or may not be communicating.
Right, and the city police.
Yeah, and city police too as well, like Conroe, or if the Woodlands becomes, how do you sell that to the public, that it's better to have multiple law enforcement groups than say just the sheriff's department, which I think maybe a lot of people here and watching think that that ought to be the primary law enforcement tool, you know, as long as it's a reasonable size.
And the city police.
And that the constables, you know, just do their process serving as their constitutional function.
Well,
How do you sell that to get beyond those boundaries?
well, like you said, the city is really, the incorporation has really helped or hurt the sheriff's office when they incorporated Walden. Certain, they want to incorporate April Sounds. So at the sheriff's office, that's where we have a lot of our patrol deputies already. Now, this is going to be patrolled by the city, so our patrol deputies are going to go to other areas. I think with several
Are
law,
you still bound to cover those areas?
not if
or
it
is
gets
that-
incorporated. They'll be the primary, the city will be the primary responding agency in the incorporated area. So the county,
So the sheriff doesn't have any responsibility at that point at all?
well,
They're backup.
we could still go and back them up, but as of, they call 911, it'll go to Conroe dispatch, Conroe
Right.
officers will respond.
Right.
If we don't, and that's the thing about Conroe and the county now, we're on different radio systems. So if Conroe gets dispatched, we don't know if they're going there. They'd have to call and ask for help.
Oh, okay.
So, but I think with several law enforcement agencies, the sheriff's office only has so many officers. I mean, except for the Woodlands, where the Woodlands, they have so many officers and they're able to cover pretty much every mile in the Woodlands. But in the other areas, precinct or Division 1, or they're only limited officers. It might be 8 officers at night, 8 officers during the day. So they're very limited and they have to cover the entire county. And when I was on patrol, we had calls holding for service. It might be, in progress calls never hold. We were always going there first. Burglary of a motor vehicle, and then it was passed, might hold for an hour or two till we cleared. I just think with the constables, where they're the primary duty is civil, during the day, most of the time when they serve the civil. I think if we have a 24-hour agency, they could really help the sheriff's office by picking up the slack of going out and helping them with in-progress calls, going to the burglary of motor vehicles, to the theft calls, instead of just patrolling an area and like, oh, sheriff will get it later. I just feel that they're not being utilized the way they should be utilized. So I would sell it as it's an extra patrolman. That's all it is really extra patrolman.
Just a real quick clarification, if an incorporated area has their own police force, they can still contract with the sheriff, can't they?
They can, yes.
And would they be contracted to do both, or would they be not the sheriff and contracted to the city?
I don't know how it just depends on how they write the contract. Yeah, there's no, I guess, law that says one way or the other. I think it's how the contract is written.
Well, the sheriff, from my understanding, still has responsibility throughout the county.
They do.
Whether it's unincorporated or
We
incorporated.
do, but they'll have the primary,
They have
the
the
call.
primary in the
So
city.
we'll get a call now, and it might be an ag assault or a sexual assault pass. They'll come up to the hospital, And where were you sexually assaulted? Oh, I was at, off 45 and Gladstone. It's like, oh, that's the city, let me call you a city unit, because they have the primary jurisdiction of that.
Okay.
Now, if there's nobody available, we could ultimately take it, and then our detectives will investigate it. But if it's in the city, we give first dibs to the city to let them do it, because it happened in their jurisdiction, and they're ultimately responsible for that. Doesn't mean we can't do it, we can, but usually it's the city that does it.
And public safety would not be sacrificed, huh?
What's that?
Public safety.
Yes.
We got about 10 minutes,
Wow.
probably enough to go over and take.
All right.
Larry?
With all of your various background, you deal with the FBI, you do all that. How time-wise are you going to be able to put in the program that you're very qualified to do? Time-wise, how will you accomplish all that and do the administrative duties that the head constable does?
Well, my obligations right now with the sheriff's office are those duties. Once I leave the sheriff's office and go to the constables, I will no longer have those duties to do the active shooter, to do the dignitary, to be on SWAT. So I have new duties, new tasks. So it'll be literally me, time management. I'm still gonna continue to keep up my certifications, which I've done for the last 20 years. I've been a paramedic since 2000. I keep up, I've gone to school and got my master's degree on my own time. So I have a wife that really understands it and helps me quite a bit, even with 7 kids. So I'm not gonna say I'm an expert time manager, but my wife helps me quite a bit, and a lot of those other duties will go away, and it'll be constable duties that I can focus on.
Kind of as a follow-on to that, how many deputies are in the constable's office now, in precinct 2, under
It's
Constable?
14 with the constable, it'll be 15.
15? And with what you want to implement, how big do you anticipate the precinct, the office is going to grow to accomplish?
I don't think it needs to grow much more than it already is. I just feel that they need to be focused. I see people have told me that there's the same constable working an extra job in their subdivision who's just driving around. And I think if we focus them and tell them, hey, this is your shift, this is what you're gonna do, I just think, restructuring their shift and their duties, it could be done. Like we talked about earlier, I don't think it takes 15 of them to serve civil process. Now, if it does, it doesn't have to take all 15 of them to serve Monday through Friday, or 7 days a week. It could be, we could pick a day, Wednesday, we're gonna go serve all civil, and then we're gonna focus on other stuff the other days. It's not gonna take 24/7, 7 days a week to go out and serve civil. I think restructuring the schedule and getting them focused will be sufficient to do that.
And you could do that with the staff that you have now,
I believe so,
rather
yes.
than growing that?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Dale?
Okay, in response to the question about anything in your background, you gave kind of an interesting answer there, which raised a question that looked to me like you went from very much going in one direction to very much going in a different direction.
I understand. What do you mean by going in different directions? About the divorce and then the Class C arrest?
Right.
Right. So I was going through a divorce at the time, and I had just moved here from Arizona, so I didn't have a place to live. So I was literally struggling. I was working 2 jobs. I was working as a engineer apprentice at the Galleria, and I was working at drive-thru. I just got out of the military, and I was working at the drive-thru at Jack in the Box. And I had given my ex-wife, the vehicle to keep, and I lived close enough that I could use a bike to go back and forth. So like I said, I was going through a tough time. Vehicle had no registration, no inspection. I got a citation for it, couldn't pay for this ticket, and it became a warrant, and I was stopped on traffic and was arrested for that. But it was all because of the divorce, having to pay child support, having to pay for the repoed vehicle, so that's where that came from.
Okay, so it was strictly transition and life circumstances?
Yes.
Your location and the transition of leaving your wife and so forth?
I was living in Arizona with my mom. We had just got out of the military. We were living there. I was working as an EMT in the casino, and my ex-wife left me, came back to Houston to be with her family, so I decided to follow my daughter, relocated here, got my own apartment, and in the process, financial burden, because I came to Houston, no job, no place to live, and it was just life circumstances.
Okay, I'm gonna shift a little bit now since this will be my last turn. But on your answer, the discussion about red flag laws, there's discussions about that statewide, nationally, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is not quite the same, but several years back, Sheriff Gage basically came out with a public statement, formal statement, I'm not gonna take anybody's guns away. Okay, so now in the context of all the discussions with red flag laws and all that sort of stuff, now I know you're a Second Amendment adherent and all that, but when you're told go take that person's gun, what choices do you have?
Well, I feel that it needs to be a due process. I don't think just, we talked about it earlier, where just go take his guns away. That's not what I'm NRA, I'm a big Second Amendment supporter. I'm not just gonna go take somebody just because somebody told me. They could tell me go arrest this person, and like I said, I'm not gonna put myself in a risk.
So you would ignore a judge's order, because that's usually where the red flag law starts. It says, you know, the judge says, I consider that person a risk. He hasn't even been before the judge, but the judge says, and so you're given orders, go take his gun.
Well, when they tell you to go take them, doesn't mean you have to go take them right then and there. There's leeway. You're serving it just like a warrant. I mean, they tell you to go, the warrant might be in place for a certain amount of time. Doesn't mean you have to go serve it right when they sign it. So it could be, you could hold off and then due process. Like I said, if people to come up and get time to answer to the allegations. So
Okay,
it's
James?
Well, in the case of a misdemeanor, where someone calls in to report it, your deputy shows up, the alleged offender isn't there, does the deputy go ahead and write a ticket, or what? What do they tell the
it depends
person
on
they
the
call?
misdemeanor. If it's
Misdemeanor.
so if it's a Class C assault, we still have to separate them, and we could issue a Class C assault
Well, they're not
warrant.
there.
If
The
they're not
offender
there,
is not there.
if they're not there, we'll take the report of what the person said.
Right.
We could reach out. We could try to reach out to the suspect
Right.
and ask them, hey, do you want to meet and talk about this? Do you want to give a statement? And if they say no, then we'll write a report and say, you know, this is what the victim said, attempted to make contact with the suspect, unable to or refused to make contact, and we'll ship it, the patrolman will ship it to the detective. Now the detective is bound to reach out to the suspect or to the accused and ask them, hey, can you come in and you want to give a statement? And then that's when they'll come in to get interviewed by the detective. But as an officer, like I said, we have so many calls holding, we can't spend too much time trying to go find somebody for a statement. We'll give them every
Right.
option. If they refuse, we'll put refuse
Now, the
statement.
person that called, how are they notified of what's going on? Do they have to call somebody to see what happened?
Well, if they call us we'll come out to them. We'll come out to the scene. If they tell us
Right.
if they were assaulted, but the alleged has left already, we're still gonna come out. We're not gonna tell them we'll come out later. We come out to them.
Right, I'm saying that's happened, and
Right.
you filed the report and all
Right.
that. Does the person that called get notified there's been a report, they wouldn't talk, or, you know, whatever happened? How do
That's
we
up to
find
the
out?
detective to call. Some detectives do call and say, hey, I've reached out to him or her. They refuse comment or refuse a statement, just letting you know. Or they might call the detective and, hey, I want to know what the situation or what's the details of my case. And they might let them know, hey, we're attempting to make contact. He's refusing.
Uh-huh.
We're going to go ahead and submit it to the DA's office and let them decide if we're going to file a warrant to make him come and answer to those allegations.
Thank you.
In the constable's office right now, are there any existing policies that need to be changed, or things that should have been done that have been on the back burner, or are there jobs that you want to do pretty soon after you got into office?
Well, like I said, one of them is making a 24-hour agency, but also the lack of, they have a couple of detectives, investigators, but they're assigned to the ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children, and that's what they deal. They help the DA's office with that. I want to get our detective, our patrolmen certified to be investigators at the street level who could work their own. So like I said, right now, they might go to a scene and hold a scene for the SO, for the sheriff's office, and tell the people, while we're waiting for SO to get here, once SO gets there, hey, this is what you have, I'm going back in service.
SO being
The sheriff's office. And this is what you have, and I'm gonna go back and service. It's like, why didn't you take the report? Well, we don't have detectives. So that's one of the policies I wanna change to where they don't do that.
And the sheriff would be okay with that? You would start the report and hand it off to him, or?
That's what they do now. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's what we do now. They've been doing that several years. When several of my coworkers have found out that I'm running for constable, they said, please change that. That's one thing we dislike about that is they'll respond to the scene, and as soon as they show up, they go back in service and leave. And it's like, they're police officers, why couldn't they take the report? And it's, of course, because of manpower. They don't have a 24-hour agency. They don't have detectives that are certified or trained to be investigators. So that's one of the main things.
So where do
we want
those
to-
reports get filed? Does the sheriff have one file cabinet and the constable has another file cabinet, or do they go to the same detective?
Nope. It goes, well, it'll go to, depending who writes the report. So that's why they don't write the report, because if the constables write it, it goes in through their infrastructure, and they don't have a detective. Where if the sheriff's office writes it, it goes through our infrastructure to our detectives. So if the constable will write it, the sheriff detective will never get it.
So you would have a detective, or you would
Yes.
funnel it to the sheriff?
No, I want to, I'm gonna train every patrolman to investigate their own
Okay.
cases. So they'll be doing multiple duties.
Okay.
They'll be doing multiple duties.
Okay, I think we got time for one more. Dale?
Okay. A good friend of mine, one I've known for over 30 years, is the father of a sheriff's deputy in another county. And he's told me about this policy that, if you pull over, if a law enforcement officer pulls over somebody who is either another law enforcement officer or whatever, they don't get a ticket. It's a get out of jail free pass,
Like a professional courtesy?
whatever you want to call it. I'll call it a get out of jail free pass. What is your view on that? Have you ever done that?
No, I have not.
Would you? Would you
I-
teach your officers to do that?
I will not, no, sir. I have, I don't have any ties, like, I'm not from Texas. I'm originally from California. And one of the questions was about, the good old boy system. I don't owe anybody anything. Nobody owes me anything. There's no quid pro quo. I don't ask for favors. I've never been called to, hey, can you fix this? Can you do this for me? And I've had several people call me, and I'm like, hey, that's another jurisdiction. Take that up on your own. I don't fix anything for anybody, and nobody's ever fixed anything for me.
So if you found out, let's say theoretically you're elected constable and you find out that your people are doing that, what's your response?
Disciplinary action. I mean, figure it out, I guess, case per case situation. So we'll take disciplinary action.
Okay.
All right, Dennis?
Just real quick, about how many reserve officers do you have, or does the constable do have?
I don't know. I know he's let some of them go.
I mean, it's more like 10 or 100?
No, not 100. It's probably about 10 to 15.
Okay.
He also has a mounted posse, which is civilians I don't know if they use their own horses or so on supplies, but he does have a mounted posse. So, yes, some of those programs I think are necessary.
Where do we sign up for that?
Right.
Wide Earth. Wide Earth, man.
Yeah, he has a mounted posse of civilians that do certain events on horseback. Yes, sir.
Interesting. All right, so we're coming to the end here. If you want to go ahead and take 5 minutes to wrap her up. Appreciate you coming in.
First of all, I want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to come here in front of you. You can see through my background, through my questions, I do have a passion for the citizens of Montgomery County and for public safety. Prior military, grew up in California, left there when I was 18 years old for the Army. Immediately after the Army, I went to, became an EMT, paramedic. Came to work at the sheriff's office shortly after that. My ex-wife didn't want me to be a cop. So we got divorced and I decided it was my time to be a cop. So I went to the police academy, did that for several years, left to Iraq to do private security. I wanted to give back a little more back to my country. I felt that I was in during peacetime, really didn't serve my country the way I should have. So I went back to Iraq as a private security contractor, did a couple years there, came back to the sheriff's office. I have 7 kids in the Conroe area. I'm committed to Conroe in the Montgomery County, as you can see from my dedication to programs and different duties that I have. Like I said, I'm doing this for the love of the community. I wish it was like an application process where you could submit an application and the best candidate would get the position. But we do know it's an election, and, you know, one of the questions was about endorsements. Several people have endorsed me privately. They can't endorse me publicly, but because of certain, I guess you could say, conflict of interest, several constables, you know, are connected to another constable's or another candidate's family member or vice versa. But I've had several tell me that they want me to be the constable. Even some of the deputies have reached out to me and told me that they want me to be their deputy constable or the constable. But
How's the sheriff feel about losing you?
I've spoken to the sheriff. He's not gone one way or the other. He's got two deputies that are running. One of my opponents is a detective with us, so he's not endorsing anybody, but he knows. And he hasn't come out and said, "Hey, great for you," or "No, don't do it." When I told him, he was happy for me, and if he didn't have confidence in me, I don't think he'd put me in charge of some of the programs we have.
Right. Okay.
But other than that, thank you again.
All right.
Thank you for serving our country.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
That's right.